So what can I say? What can I do but offer this heart, oh God, completely dear?
Luke 8:22 through 25, like we said, it's a basic story. And it was actually birthed, I was every night I spend time with my son, who's 4 years old, and we read the Bible together. It's it's the highlights of my day, spending time with my 4-year-old son and our 5-month-old daughter. It is the joy of my day. My days get busy, and yet I know at night I can come home, and a lot of times when I open the garage, my son is running out the door going, "Daddy, Daddy." And you can't beat that. You can't beat that. So me and him one night were reading this story about Jesus and him taking the disciples out onto the lake and the storm coming. And as I was sitting there were some things that started to dawn on me in the simplicity of it. Let's read it together. One day Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's cross to the other side of the lake." So they got in the boat and they started out. As they sailed across, Jesus settled down for a nap. But soon a fierce storm came down on the lake. The boat was filling with water and they were in real danger. The disciples went and they woke him up shouting, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." When Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and the raging waves. And suddenly the storm stopped and was calm. And was calm. I love it. The actual phrase in the Greek, it says calm. The true meaning said it was calm occurred. Calm occurred. How many of us tonight need that to happen in our lives? Before I go any further in the story, I want to talk about first, start thinking in your mind. Let's take a moment. Because sometimes we gloss over the storms because we want to put them out of the way to not deal with them. We just put them off. But let's tonight, for one night, let's take all the storms and put them on the front row. Okay? Because what I want to show you tonight is that it won't be the absence of the storms or the avoidance of the storms. What I believe God's going to show us here in His Word tonight is how to deal with them in the right perspective. Amen. Because you know what's funny is that when we ignore something, it will come back. And you know the funny thing is about as we ignore it long enough, when does it come back? Always at the wrong time. Right? Not with my right attitude. It always, that thing I might harbor against somebody, I go, no, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. I meet the person, boom! Right? And then I lash out. And then I got to go and I need to confess. So the key that I'm excited about tonight is let's not avoid it. Let's get it to the front. Let's get it to the front. So let's start thinking. Everybody tonight, let's start. If you got a piece of paper, start writing. What are those things right now you go, I don't like this. I'm uncomfortable with this. This is a storm. This is a storm in my life that I have. Let's start getting those on the deal. So, here we are. When Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and the raging waves, and suddenly the storm stopped and all was calm. And then he asked them, "Where is your faith?" The disciples were terrified and amazed. I love that. Terrified and amazed. You see, what's interesting is as we start to piece this all together, and all of what we need to understand in this story is that it all hinges around him. Not around the circumstances that were going on. It hinges around him. This. What's the hinge of this? It's Him. And if my life doesn't hinge around Him, then I got a wrong perspective. Amen. The storm in this is not the major player. He's the major player. Amen. And what I love is when we finally, like the disciples, start to understand some things, we will be terrified and amazed at the same moment. You know, a lot of times what's interesting about terrified and amazed today is that as I speak, you know, and have time with other pastors and so forth, there's kind of this thing today in the American Western church of saying, we don't want to use the word fear. We don't want to fear God. Well, I'll tell you what, folks. I want to be afraid of the King of Kings, because it puts into perspective who really is in control. He is everything. He was always. You know, me and my son, we do the names of God, and it's so He loves. He gets this amazement factor that starts to happen when we start doing the names. And the interesting thing is that you get the feeling in his head, he's going, God is really all this? God is really all this? He really is King of Kings? He really is Lord of Lords? He really is the Alpha and the Omega? Let me tell you who my God is. I'm off the notes, right? We're just, forget this. God's doing something. Revelations 19:11. One of my favorite passages of all the Bible. And when I get discouraged, this is the one place that I go every time. Because it puts into perspective who He is, who I serve. And I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and He who sat upon it is called Faithful. Not sometimes faithful, faithful. He is true. He is the truth. And in righteousness He judges and wages war. He gives perfect judgment to my heart, to your heart, to this world. And His eyes are flames of fire, and upon His head are many crowns and diadems, and His name is written upon Him, which no one knows except Himself. And He is clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and His name is called the Word of God. And the armies which are in heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, are following Him on white horses. And from His mouth comes a sharp sword, so that with it He may smite the nations, and He will rule. He will rule them with a rod of iron, and He treads the winepress of the fierce wrath of God, the Almighty. And on His robe and on His thigh He has a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. We've been talking about it all night. We praising, you know, there was a note I wrote down in the bag. I love to just ponder and think about these things. And I said, when you are bragging on God, you can't be belittled by Satan. You see, when I'm so caught up in the glory and the majesty of the King, can Satan touch that? Talk about fear. He's not going to tread in that area.